Thank you very much, Sue, for having me here. So I just want to offer the perspective from a young adult. So as Sue mentioned, I was implanted at the age 10 to 20 years ago, and I've had the privilege and being fortunate to get such a very well supportive system within my family, my education, that I performed very well with the cochlear implant throughout my schooling. But at the same time, because everything was taken care of for me as I was growing up, I didn't develop the awareness about my cochlear implant and what I needed to do in order to be responsible for the lifelong care of my cochlear implant. So when I went into university, things started coming into my realization that there are certain things that I needed to take more ownership on. But the reality was that when I was going through university, and like many other young people, their priority at that time was focusing on school and looking for work and other things that typically young people have on top of the list. So naturally, we took our cochlear implants for granted that we think that it will just be a piece of technology that can last us for a lifetime without realizing the fact that we need to be active in the process when we go into the clinics for our annual mapping process. So for example, it was only a year ago that I learned that not all of the electrodes were used in my implant, that only a few of them were activated and the others are not activated. And the purpose of that is they could be used as a backup. So I'm pretty late to the game in the sense that being fully aware of how the cochlear implants work, because back then I was just told, the cochlear implant involved inserting an electrode into the cochlea to replace the functions of the hair cell and they will work. And that's the basic foundation I had at the very beginning. So I didn't know what I don't know, right? So my vision was short term, like many other young people, that we only focus on the present rather than the future. And this could lead to potential problems. Next slide, please. So we're not really maximizing the benefits of our cochlear implant technology. So when we go into the clinic, we don't know what questions to ask. We just go in and listen to the beeps, and it sounds good to us, then off we go. Right? So we never really thought to ask about, sharing the workplace environment that we're in, what lifestyles that we lead, like some of us want to have a better appreciation for music and to have those conversations with the healthcare provider so that we can really maximize the benefits of our technology. And because we had our parents and our teachers taking care of things for us when we were younger, we were not prepared for any equipment failure. So when the processor stopped working, do we know what we can do to troubleshoot the problem? Some of us could potentially be in a panic mode because we never experienced that before and we didn't know what are the steps that needs to be taken in order to resolve the problem. Yeah. And because we did take things for granted, we didn't see the motivation to advocate for better access. So there was this conversation with another young person who wasn't aware of how much the cochlear implant processors would cost. And upon that realization, he realized that he had no support in order to pay for an upgrade because of the healthcare system in his country. So again, that is an enormous amount of expense that he has to consider when he plans for an upgrade in the future. So overall, what the needs of the young people are the following. Next slide, please. So we need to educate and empower young people to take ownership of the lifelong care for the cochlear implant. So that involves having those conversations with the healthcare provider and asking the right questions. They also need to understand the potential long-term risk, because as someone who's been implanted from a very young age, 10 years old, it is my hope that my implant will last me until I'm 90, if I am lucky to live that long. So basically, the internal implant will be required to work for 80 years in the best case scenario. But I also have to prepare for the worst case scenario, that in the event that my implant does fail, what are my options? What can I do to be able to move forward in that scenario? And ultimately, and I cannot stress this enough and reiterate the points that have been raised earlier, the need to connect with a peer network of cochlear implant users and mentors. And this leads us to an example of what my organization does. Next slide. So with the International Federation of Hard of Hearing Young People, we are a global organization that focuses on the power of building the community for young people. And this includes cochlear implant users. Next slide, please. So on top of sharing information about our experiences and our stories, because everybody's story is different, we also aim to empower our young people to be advocates, to have a better understanding of what the possibilities are with the hearing loss and how they can maximize the benefits of the resources that they should access. Okay. Next slide. So right now we have 21 member countries, mostly in Europe and North America, and we're continuing to expand to Asia, Africa, and South America as well. So it is my excitement to share that we are looking forward to have a conversations with the CIICA network to offer an opportunity to have a CIICA conversations about what the needs of young people with cochlear implants are, and to start that conversation on re-educating them and empowering them to be able to take more ownership of the lifelong care of the cochlear implants. Next slide. So I invite you to connect with us as well through email and social media, and we look forward to the future conversations at CIICA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bowen, very much indeed. You raised some really interesting questions, and there's some points. People are very interested in the chat room. I'm sorry we're not going to have time to follow up those questions, but they can contact you. People loved that. They loved you sharing that, and the great points that you made about growing up with an implant and then having to take ownership of it yourself, and that rehabilitation needs to include that.